Morning, everyone. Welcome to Start Your Day Great. Start your day with a coach, the show where we talk about personal development and high performance and how to get into the next gear in your life. I'm your host, certified high performance coach Sean Butner. And today we're talking about what to do when you feel depressed, because it can be really tough depending on where you're at. If that's you, roughly 7% of the U.S. population each year has some degree of depression. Historically, and I imagine that this past year might change those numbers for this year. And so, first I'm going to say that in the most severe cases of feeling depressed, you definitely need to talk or seek out a mental health professional like a therapist or a psychiatrist, because, they have the skills that can help you deal with what's going on, right? So I want to make that disclaimer. I can't diagnose or give advice like that legally, but I can talk about just a quick checklist to help you maximize your mood, help make sure you're not stuck in your head, because these are things that have helped me in my life, because I tended when I was younger to be a little bit more brooding and a little bit more probably depressed myself. So, and I think we all have our phases with this subject. So again, seek a mental health professional. If you're like, man, I have a hard time getting out of bed in the morning, I can't function at work, like those are really bad signs. And not that they're bad, but it's warning signs that you need probably to take a little bit more strong action to address it. But, there's a checklist of things we can do to make sure that we're maximizing how we feel each day, right? And to generate motivation, to generate confidence, to generate excitement, and more of the positive emotions that will keep you from feeling blue or down, right? So the checklist that has helped me very much in my life is, number one, how are you working out? When I had first gotten into the job market out of college, I moved to an area where I didn't know anyone, so I didn't have any friends, didn't have any family there. I was working a lot, didn't really feel like I had control over my time, and, I would just not want to wake up, when I would get sleep, right? I would be so stressed out I'd have insomnia, but, like, the general feeling of misery and just feeling like, kind of like, what's the point of life? If you've ever had that feeling where you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And all of that kind of stuff, like, happened for about 6 months, and it took me, probably the biggest difference in pulling myself out of that feeling of just not feeling myself, not feeling motivated to get out there, and always feeling kind of just down and sad and miserable and frustrated and irritable and all that kind of stuff, was that I started training for marathons, right? And what this did is it burned a lot of the stress, a lot of the anxiety I was having in my life, so I could channel that out of my body, by running a ridiculous amount. And it gave me the space to be able to think, like, okay, like, if that stuff's stressing me out, what doesn't stress me out, right? What can I do? How can I shift my mind? How can I shift what I'm doing to get into a better spot in life? And so, if, whatever health thing you can do, if it's taking walks, if it's training for marathons, is it powerlifting, is it CrossFit, is it just a kettlebell workout, is it just, daily stretching, whatever works for you and your body, it's important that as human beings that we move, because without that, I think you get a lot of built up emotions that you don't get out of your body. So it's a very, very important thing to do. So second thing I found is to eat whole, good food. And this point comes from all the weird experiments I've done in my life in regard to diet. So I've been vegan, vegetarian. I saw this movie probably about 10 years ago called No Trash Man on Netflix. This guy tried to live a year without producing any trash, and I was like, oh, I wonder how long I could go with that. And so when you buy whole foods and fresh produce and nothing that comes in a box, the biggest surprise to me was just how much better I felt. And so this idea that whole real foods, produce, fresh stuff, not processed foods, really is the other way to look at it, can really change how you feel. And that's when I stopped doing fast food and stuff. And when I eat fast food now, I feel just terrible. And it's nothing wrong with it. It's just I noticed that change in my body because I've had time to kind of examine it. And so, if you're constantly feeling run down or tired or slow, maybe it's a diet thing and it's worth examining with your doctor, or just running an experiment of what if I only ate fresh produce, leafy greens, and bulk foods, and try to not eat things that came out of a package. I think these little life experiments are, one, fun. Two, it gets you into learning, and I think, too, if you're feeling kind of blue, when you're trying to learn something, it's hard to think about how much you're feeling miserable. So, having that learning mindset is another kind of underlying idea of, this checklist of kind of basics on, how to maximize your mood. So, eat whole, good foods. Sleep. Sleep is so important. There's a ton of research out there on it. As a high performance coach, we recommend you try to get at least 7 to 9 hours, because most people are not crazy enough, don't have the genetic thing that'll help you only survive on 3 hours of sleep a night. And many more people think they can than they do. And if you ask your neighbors, you ask your friends, you ask your family, if you're doing great with 3 hours of sleep, I would imagine they're going to be like, oh, you're kind of grumpy. Don't like to be around you. So, and so nailing that down is really good. So things that I use to help me with insomnia, which comes and goes and I've struggled with my whole life. It's, the right temperature for sleeping. So we have something called the chili cube. You can actually see that, in the mirror behind me. So it's a mat that goes between your sheets and, or the bed and the first layer of sheets, the one that wraps around, the fitted one, that's what it's called. And it pumps a little thin layer of water that'll regulate temperature. So, my wife is always cold. She can have her temperature up. I can crank mine down to a cool, 65 degrees. And that knocks me out. So, thinking about temperature, thinking about habits before bed, how do you wind down, how do you get out of screens, how do you, caffeine intake is a huge, huge thing. As someone that absolutely loves coffee, it's disheartening to know how terrible caffeine can be and how long it lasts in your system. So there's all these sleep factors, but getting enough quality sleep each night can do wonders for your just how you feel. So if you've ever had a solid night's sleep and you wake up and you're just I'm ready to go, to conquer the world, to get after it, then you know what I'm talking about. Now, if you haven't had that experience, you need to have that experience because it's amazing. So, all right, get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. The fourth thing is to engage socially, right? Do kind things for friends and loved ones and coworkers. Try to do community things. So whether that's grilling out back, and you're, inviting people over for a grill out or dinner or something like that. If it's going to a museum to check out art and share that experience, or going to a music show now that, stuff's starting to open up again since COVID, these social activities that get your mind out of yourself and engaged in culture and what's going on in the world can really, really help you feel better and more connected. Sometimes when you're feeling down, you can feel kind of lonely, and this is the antidote to combat that at a very basic level. And then the fifth thing is a little bit bigger, but, asking yourself the question, am I working on things that matter? Am I working on things that matter to me, to advancing my life, my goals, the goals of my company and organizations and family? Because sometimes if you're not congruent with that, if you're I do a lot of stuff and it's stuff that I don't want to do and it's stuff that doesn't really matter to me or my family or my community, that's a recipe for just kind of silently struggling, right? And so if that's the case, that could be a little bit trickier, or maybe not. Maybe you know what you want to do, but you don't have the skills to start. You don't have the skills to overcome some of the anxiousness or fear in starting that. And maybe that's why you should work with a coach. So, or a mentor or somebody else. And, that's something I can help you with. So if you go to seanbutler.com/coaching, I can get you hooked up with that. But ultimately, finding those things that matter to you and being able to focus on it and drive those forward to get momentum, it's hard to feel kind of down and blue when you're making stuff happen. Which is why I think so many people, when something happens that causes them to feel a little depressed, that they go 135,000% into work. You kind of get in that workaholic zone because it can help a little bit. But you also don't want that to be the whole thing, because if something happens there, then it's kind of a worse hangover. So now, these, again, are basics that can help you feel more happy, motivated, and confident in your life. If you are like, hey, I'm doing all these and I'm still feeling kind of blue, or you're like, I think there's something more there, or I'm not sure this will help, definitely, again, talk to your mental health professionals that are, have the very discrete skills in addressing things that are severe in depression, or things that might be blocking you from living your full life. I as a coach, it's really important to point that out, that, there are people with special skills that operate in a world that I don't. And so it's in your best interest to make sure that, you're taking care of traumas or addictions or depression, as we're talking about today, with people that have the skills to help you move forward. And there's no shame in asking for help. I think depending on your culture and where you're from, it can be really difficult to say, hey, something's wrong. I need someone to kind of talk this through, or someone to help me unlock this so it doesn't, keep me from living my true full potential. So the last time I'll do that disclaimer. But, again, these are the basics. I hope you found something in here that you're like, even if you're not depressed, this checklist is really good and just feeling good about the day. And if we can engage learning, if we can, engage in connection, if we can engage in our purpose and making things happen out in the world, I think we'll be in a much better place. So that said, guys, I'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 o'clock for Start Your Day with a Coach. So go forth, live with more joy, personal growth, and impacting communities, and I'll see you then. Take care.